3 counties, 24 cities, working together, accomplishing more than any of us could alone. Whether your roots run generations deep, or you recently moved to Greater Portland, you are a part of Metro, the nation's only regional government elected by the people. Planning for the future, preserving what we love. Let's keep our region thriving for decades to come.
I'm Laura Lepley, a Metro Park Ranger. Here at Oxbow Park, safety is our #1 priority, not only for our guests, but for our staff members. I'm at the Welcome Center and you're at the Regional Center. The council chambers are located on the 3rd floor. In the event of a fire or fire alarm, please exit through the door in the northeast corner of the room. Go down the stairway to the 2nd floor, exit through the main entrance by the reception desk and gather in the courtyard outside that entrance. In the event of a medical or fire emergency, please call 911 and notify the security agent at the reception desk. The nearest defibrillator is mounted on the steps leading from the reception desk down to Grand Avenue. Thank you, and come visit us at Oxbow Park.
All right, we're going to declare a quorum and call the Metro Council business meeting to order. I want to ask our clerk, Georgia Langer, to call the roll for attendance.
Yes, Councilor Nolan.
Present. Good morning.
Councilor Gonzalez.
Present. Good morning.
Councilor Lewis. Present. Councilor Rosenthal.
Present.
Councilor Simpson should be joining us shortly, and Acting Council President Wong.
Present. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to public communications on non-agenda items. Georgia, can you please describe to our audience our procedures that we will use for public communications?
Yes. If you are testifying on non-agenda items, now is the time to do so. If you are testifying in person, please sign up by filling out the blue card in the back of the room and bringing it up to me. If you are testifying on Zoom or by phone, please sign up by using the raise hand function in the reactions or more menus, or by dialing *9. When it is your turn to testify, I'll call your name or phone number. For those on Zoom, click accept to be promoted to a panelist. Your Zoom window will close briefly before you rejoin as a panelist, and you can turn on your camera if you'd like. Testimony is limited to 3 minutes, and the timer begins when you begin speaking. If you are testifying in person, their timer is located at your testimony table, on the wall, and on the digital screen. Please state your name for the record before testifying. You do not need to give your physical address. And Acting Council President Wong, I am not seeing anyone in the audience, virtually or physically, who have signed up in advance or are coming now.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we'll close public testimony. All right, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Colleagues, we have 6 items on the consent agenda. But I understand, Councilor Rosenthal, you had a concern about one of them.
Yes, I would like to take item 5.2. I forgot my glasses today. I got up so early. Regarding the Virtus solid waste out-of-system permit off the consent agenda. I have a couple of questions.
Okay, well, let's manage the consent agenda, but let's pull resolution number 265592 from the consent agenda. But we do have item 3.1, resolution number 26-5598 for the purpose of confirming a member to the Regional Waste Advisory Committee. Resolution number 26-5595 for the purpose of amending rules and procedures related to the conduct of council business. And then we have consideration of the March 19th, 2026 council meeting minutes, consideration of the April 7th, 2026 council meeting minutes, and consideration of the April 9th, 2026 council meeting minutes. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Acting President Wong, I'll move to approve the consent agenda with the removed item.
Second.
Okay, it's moved by Councilor Gonzalez, seconded by Councilor Rosenthal. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Okay, the consent agenda passes unanimously. Let's pick up some questions on resolution number 265592.
Thank you, Chair. Just two quick questions I have. One, I noticed in the documentation for this out-of-system compliance permit that the hauling agency had a bunch of violations, and I just want to be clear that their systemic violations have been corrected, or that we anticipate that they're not going to be in reporting compliance difficulty going forward. So I want to check on that. And then the other question is, I've been just curious as to how much tonnage we actually send to Spokane compared to how much tonnage we send to other disposal facilities. Is it a significant, is it a large amount? What percentage of the overall is it?
My name is Hyla Ritter. I'm the Standards and Compliance Manager. Clark. She's a senior planner in Waste Prevention Environmental Services Department, and developed the staff recommendation that we have before you today for this non-system license. So I want to make sure that I understand what you're asking around the compliance for this facility. Are you talking about the applicant that is generating the waste to take it out of the region, or are you talking about the Spokane Waste to Energy facility?
No, I'm talking about the applicant who applying for the hauling, out-of-system hauling. My understanding is we've reviewed, or we've been to the Spokane Energy facility, and we've reviewed it, and we found that it's in compliance and has capacity and so forth. But I noticed that there were some reporting violations for the hauler, and I just want to clarify that this is a past practice, and that we think that this has been rectified so that we're not going to continue to have compliance problems with them.
Yes, thank you. Great question. So Veris Industries, which is a subsidiary of Schneider Electric, is a business that has applied to transport its waste to Spokane because of their internal sustainability goals, where they prefer to divert to waste to energy facility instead, with the goal of being a zero waste to landfill company. And so in the past, when the Covanta incineration facility, the ReWorld facility in Brooks, outside of Salem, was operating, the Veris Industries had a non-system license to transport waste to that facility, and there were issues at that time. They had some reporting once that non-system license was issued. There are monthly reporting requirements. That's how we track the waste and where it's going and make sure that the requisite fees and taxes are assessed and then remitted. The reporting piece wasn't happening once the non-system license was issued, and we followed up with them several times, and we didn't get any response back from them at all. And because of their non-responsiveness at that time, we revoked that initial non-system license, and they were no longer authorized to transport the waste to that facility. And when they got that revocation letter, they reached out to us and said, what's going on? And explained that tragically, the person at their company who was responsible had passed away, and they had an internal communication breakdown of what was supposed to be happening, and because that non-system license was a new thing for them, and they the person who was doing it was suddenly gone. And we didn't know that either, and we just had non-responsiveness, continued non-responsiveness, and so ultimately we revoked that license. So when Veris explained to us what had happened and had put the appropriate staff in place, they reapplied for a new non-system license, which was then issued, and they reported every month and paid the fees and taxes as was required, and there were no further issues. Eventually, that non-system license was also terminated because Metro entered into a designated facility agreement directly with the ReWorld Marion Covanta Waste to Energy facility, and they assumed those reporting and remitting responsibilities. So that's why the individual non-system license to Veris was terminated the second time. And now that that facility in Salem is no longer operating, this company is interested in going to the next closest waste to energy facility, which is in Spokane. And so they're sending the waste up there.
And we think that they have the staff capacity to report. And I understand that they have to report monthly, even if they are not shipping monthly, and they have agreed to that. Is that correct?
Yes, and they definitely understand, and it really was a tragic misunderstanding in that instance. Yeah.
Okay.
And so, to your other question around the waste and where it's going, so because they do not yet have the non-system license in place, they have been transporting the waste, within the system. And once they get this non-system license, if they get this non-system license approved, then they will reroute the waste to be going up to Spokane. And the tonnage amount that they initially requested is fairly small. It's 75 tons annually. Typically, when we issue non-system licenses, we issue them for up to 500 tons so that there's flexibility. So that is what our recommendation is to allow up to 500 tons annually, although it will likely be closer to 75 tons a year.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
Sure.
All right, colleagues, any other questions? All right, is there a motion on resolution 26-5592?
I'll move to adopt.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved by Counselor Rosenthal, seconded by Counselor Gonzalez. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, all opposed, say nay. Okay, resolution 26-5592 also passes unanimously. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to our presentations. This is item 4.1, Regional Emergency Transportation Routes Project, Findings and Recommendations. We have one presentation today preparing us for the Regional Emergency Transportation Routes legislation we'll consider next month. At our last briefing in October, the council provided comments and questions in advance of the final technical and community workshops. Today is our last chance to ask questions before council consideration on May 21st. Please welcome Ted Liebold, Transportation Policy Director, and John Merman, Senior Transportation Planner. Welcome.
Thank you, Council President Wong, members of the Metro Council. As mentioned, I'm Ted Liebold, Transportation Policy Director, and here with John Merman. Also, as mentioned, we last introduced this topic at your October 9th council session, and we're here to prepare for your eventual acceptance of this report at your May 21st council meeting. We will also be going to JPACT on that same day as well. As a reminder, this project helps the region get prepared and prioritize emergency routes to upgrade and become more resilient after a disaster. There is broad regional agreement supporting these routes and the tiering identified in the final report that we received through a lot of engagement through the process of developing the report. This work will come back to Metro Council and JPACT after its adoption through planning and policy investment priorities that will be presented through the 2028 Regional Transportation Plan update and through ongoing efforts to improve the region's resilience and developing funding strategies to make these routes more resilient. On April 3rd, TPAC unanimously recommended that JPACT and the Metro Council approve the resolution that will become before you next month. Approving that resolution accepts the final report and tiered routes and recommendations for future work through that 2028 RTP update and other efforts. And then tangentially, our sister metropolitan planning organization across the river in Washington, the Southwest Regional Transportation Commission, their board endorsed the final report on April 7th. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to John to go through some of the report details.
Thanks so much, Ted. Good morning, Metro Councilors. I'm John Merman, Senior Transportation Planner, Co-Project Manager, along with Carol Chang of the Regional Disaster Preparedness Organization. This is a jointly led project between Metro and the RDPO. And as Ted mentioned, I provided a briefing at the start of Phase 2, as well as an update on our progress in October. Excited to be back today to share the final results and ask for your vote next month to accept the findings for consideration in the next Regional Transportation Plan. Today, I'm hoping to convey the importance of these routes, the unique challenges in rural areas, and the need to raise money to fund making them more resilient. Next slide, please. So why does this work matter? Well, disaster can strike at any time. We've entered an era where the resilience of our transportation system is increasingly important. These are two photos from the Oregon wildfires in September of 2020, just an example of the type of large-scale emergency event that we could face again. In our region, we've also experienced tragic deaths from extreme heat, flooding, ice storms, and we're all well aware of the damage that the big Cascadia earthquake is projected to bring to us. Next slide, please. First, it's important to define what we're talking about when we say emergency transportation routes, so we're all on the same page. These are priority surface roads targeted during an emergency for rapid damage assessment, debris clearance or repair, and life-saving and sustaining response activities. The designation may factor into long-term maintenance and investment decisions of the route owners. We're hoping to see investments in these routes over time so they become more resilient for disasters. Next slide. Just a little bit of history on this topic in our region, starting with the map on the far left. In the mid-1990s, Metro formed and facilitated a regional emergency management group, which was made up of elected officials, emergency management planners. They focused on emergency response, preparedness, and earthquake hazard mitigation. They identified the 6 emergency lifeline corridors shown on that map on the left. A few years later, the same group identified the first emergency transportation routes, which is a broader network than the lifelines. They used relatively simple criteria to define these routes. Most were owned by the state, relatively flat, had low landslide potential, and served a major population area. Flash forward about 20 or so years, the map on the right was developed. There was renewed interest in this topic. In 2012, the Regional Disaster Preparedness Organization was formed. They approached Metro a few years later about jointly leading an update to the network, and the current project emerged in 2019. Phase 1 expanded the analysis to a 5-county study area to match the RDPO membership, so adding in Clark County, Washington, and Columbia County, Oregon. The primary outcome of that Phase 1 was to add 89 new routes to the network. Considerations used for adding routes were connectivity and access to important regional facilities like hospitals, connecting state to local routes, the resilience of a route to multiple natural hazards, and equitable access to vulnerable and isolated communities. Next slide, please. So this is a simplified timeline of both phases of the project. Phase 1, which finished in 2021, defined what routes are part of the network, as I just mentioned. Phase 2, what we're wrapping up now, is prioritized and tiered those routes that were previously defined. We are now at the end of the Phase 2, where we're asking for acceptance of our results. It's important to mention what's out of scope in this work, because it's a very broad topic area. We're not focused on regional evacuation or regional recovery planning. Ultimately, this project is about helping provide emergency responders with access to the people who need medical care, fuel, and equipment in the first few days after an event. Next slide, please. So before I show you the map of the final tiered routes, I wanted to start with a slide showing the state emergency transportation routes in Oregon and Washington. These were not the focus of our regional tiering effort, but they are very important to show since they provide the backbone for the regional routes to connect into. These are north-south routes like I-5 and I-205, east-west routes like I-84 and Sunset Highway, for example. Next slide. So this slide adds in the regional routes that our project tiered. This is a 5-county scale. I don't expect you to read the detail. I'll walk through what it shows for assessment, clearance, and response after disaster. Orange are the 2nd tier, and tan is the 3rd tier. The scoring was primarily based on how many destinations the route connected to that are crucial in emergencies, so things like hospitals, police, fire stations, airports, emergency operation centers, public work facilities. You can see that there's more dark lines in the central urban area than there are in the outskirts of the 5-county region. Since it makes sense, this is where more of these destinations are located. Also, the rural areas lack the same network of roads or people living close enough to them, so we can't provide that same level of urban safety that we can't provide that same level of safety to those rural areas. This is especially challenging for events that are higher risk in rural areas, such as wildfires, like those that affected Clackamas County in 2020. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to share a few top takeaways from the project. First, that regional emergency transportation routes are critically important. Second, we need funding strategy to improve them. And third, these rural areas are especially challenging to serve. Next slide. So what are we asking of the Metro Council and JPAC to do? First, to approve the resolution accepting the map and project findings by consent at your May 21st meetings. Second, partner with community-based organizations to develop resilience hubs, especially in those rural areas I mentioned. Third, continue to advocate for funding existing resilience projects. And lastly, adding more resilience projects to local capital improvement plans and the regional transportation plan. Next slide. Some of the benefits of taking action would be informing the regional transportation plan as well as state and local planning efforts. Second, building momentum to help fund resilience projects. And third, and most importantly, to help save lives. Next slide. So what I have here is the policy questions that we included in your packet as a prompt for discussion. First, do you have questions based on what I presented? Second, do you support the accepted tiered regional routes and project findings? And lastly, do you need any more information in advance of taking action next month? Next slide. With that, I'll thank you for your time, and we can go back to the slide before just to leave that up for prompts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, John. Colleagues, questions? Councilor Rosenthal.
Thanks, Chair. I don't really have any questions, but I do have a couple comments. First of all, I do want to confirm that this is important work, and being the representative on the RDPO, I've been following this intimately. One of the issues, of course, the RDPO is still wrestling with, well, there's two issues, and I'll mention both of them. One is the issue of not all disasters are equal. Some of them, particularly the Cascadia subduction quake, is going to much more likely affect bridges, which we have a lot of bridges, and that is an analysis that is still ongoing for the RDPO that's going to refine the process as we go forward. Fires aren't going to affect bridges in the same way. So that's something that's ongoing. And then the big concern, of course, with some of the federal changes in support for the OSSI funding for our DPO and for coordination is there's some concern going forward of the ability to coordinate and to maintain communication networks during this because of reductions in federal funding. So there are challenges moving forward. Our DPO is not funded the way it was. It's important work, and we have to keep moving forward, but there are challenges that we are facing, and I think, I see John shaking his head that he agrees that these are issues that we have to deal with. Anyway, I just want to note that.
Great, thank you. If I could just ask a basic question. How does this then translate into the RTP?
Yeah, so we will bring forward the map included in the legislation. There's a couple exhibits. One is a map focused on the metropolitan planning area. Another one is the greater 5-county region. So that is a map that we would put forward in the RTP for updating the existing map, which doesn't show any tiering on it. So it's like we're bringing this map into the RTP policy chapter where we talk about resilience and emergency transportation. So that is one primary way. There's also recommendations in the final report for the way we think about projects in the RTP and do our project list assessment. For the first time, we're recommending identifying the projects that add elements that improve resilience. We haven't tried to do that before. So that's another key recommendation that we would ask project sponsors to provide some information on whether it's improving resilience and what kinds of features it's adding. And then we would have that list of projects that we could use for other efforts for state resilience funding. The state has a resilience improvement plan, which makes you eligible for federal Protect funds. So it's a way to help get some of these projects funded through identifying the ones that are improving resilience. So that's one of the main ways.
Does that mean it's like its own section in the RTP, but for each of the routes, is it in individual jurisdictions like TSP, like they have their own local plan that calls these corridors out and then it goes into your, okay.
Yeah,
so it's both local and.
Yep. Yes. They've got the projects in their local plan and then they take them and submit them to the RTP for inclusion in the regional plan.
Understood. Thank you. Councilor Simpson.
Thank you, President Wong. Thank you for your presentation. I know that you're scoped in to just providing the routes, but I do want to ask, for the sake of the public, will they build on these routes, these plans for evacuation, et cetera, things like that?
Yes, you're correct. While evacuation wasn't the focus of our effort, these maps still can be beneficial for local and regional evacuation planning efforts. So we think that they will help, even if it wasn't the focus of how we were developing our criteria.
And does that evacuation coordination also involve like not just our local jurisdictions here, but also like the National Guard? If they're called in, are they also a part of these planning opportunities?
Yes, they are.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, well, seeing no addition, Councilor Rosenwald, do you have another question?
I'm good.
Okay,
I just forgot to take my hand down, sorry.
okay, no problem. All right, well, thanks very much. Great work, and we'll see you back in May.
See you in May. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a time certain ordinance, and I'm 30 seconds short. Is that okay?
We'll just not motion for it. We'll move slowly.
Go ahead and, we can go ahead and
Okay.
skip this agenda item.
All right, we'll move on to our ordinance. This is item 5.1, ordinance number 26-1541 for the purpose of annexing to the Metro District approximately 3 acres in Washington County at Northwest 185th Avenue and Northwest Springville Road. I will ask Carrie McLaren, our Metro attorney, to please read the procedural requirements for this portion of the meeting.
Thank you, President Swell. Because this annexation involves a land use application that requires a quasi-judicial hearing, there are additional procedural requirements that must first be addressed. Councilors must declare a conflict of interest or ex parte contact prior to the staff presentation. If a counselor, I have no camera on. If a counselor has a conflict of interest, they are not allowed to participate in the council discussion or vote in that application. If a counselor has had an ex parte contact, they must declare the substance of it on the record and it is subject to rebuttal. Discussions with Metro staff are not considered ex parte contacts. Counselors will be asked to declare any conflict of interest or an ex parte contact after I describe additional procedural requirements. And for quasi-judicial hearings of this type, Oregon land use statutes require the following statement of additional required procedures. First, under section 3.09.070 of the Metro Code, this type of annexation into the Metro District boundary must be initiated by petition, which must be reviewed and acted upon by the council following a public hearing. Public testimony at this hearing should only address the applicable approval criteria. The approval criteria are set forth in section 3.09.070 of the Metro Code and are more specifically identified in the staff report, which is part of the packet of materials before the council today. The decision of the council is final, although it can be challenged by filing a notice of intent to appeal with the Land Use Board of Appeals within 21 days of the final decision. If a person fails to raise an issue in person during the hearing or by letter, or fails to provide sufficient evidence to allow the council to respond to an issue, that issue may not be the basis for an appeal to LUBA. Failure of the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to give the council an opportunity to respond to the issues precludes an action for damages in circuit court under ORS 197.796. As to the hearing procedures, first, Metro staff will present a short report. The staff report will describe the proposal, identify the applicable approval criteria, and summarize the staff recommendation. The applicant may then make a presentation in support of their application. Following the applicant's presentation, other persons in support of the application will be given an opportunity to speak, followed by opponents of the application next. The applicant may then rebut any testimony from opponents. Public testimony will then be closed. And after the record is closed to all parties, councilors may discuss the request and ask questions of staff. A council vote will not be held until after the second reading. This hearing is part of the official record. For those testifying, please speak specifically about this application and how the criteria relate to the request. Please also submit a copy of any written testimony, and we will maintain that as part of the record. And that concludes my remarks.
Thank you. I feel like that got longer, but could be wrong. Okay, well, the case matter being reviewed is ordinance number 26-1541 for the purpose of annexing to the Metro District approximately 3 acres in Washington County at Northwest 185th Avenue and Northwest Springville Road. Do any council members have ex parte contacts to disclose?
Nope.
Seeing none. Do any council members have a conflict of interest to declare?
No.
Nope. Seeing none. Okay, I will will now call on Glenn Hamburg, Senior Regional Planner, to introduce the ordinance.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, Acting Council President Wong and councilors. I'm Glenn Hamburg, Senior Regional Planner, using he, him pronouns. It'd be fair to wonder why I'm here after our successful passage of a statutory change and Metro Code amendments last year that streamlined processes for Metro annexations. As a reminder, those important changes largely affected territories not yet, but in the process of being annexed to cities, such that the territory would be annexed automatically to the metro district boundary when also annexed to the city without the need for a duplicative application process through metro in these kinds of council proceedings. In this application's case, though, the subject territory is not being annexed to any city prior to its urbanization. So that's why we're here. Rather, the proposal before you this morning is to annex to the Metro District approximately 3 acres of land in unincorporated Washington County. The territory is comprised of 2 tax lots and some road right-of-way at the northeast corner of Northwest Springville Road and Northeast 185th Avenue, roughly in the south side of the PCC Rock Creek campus. The applicant is the private property owner themselves, Glenn Hinton. Shout out to Glenn's. The criteria for annexation to the metro boundary are in Metro Code Section 309070, which are that the territory be in the UGB, the territory be subject to measures that prevent its urbanization until the territory is either annexed to a city or to service districts that will provide the necessary urban services, and that the proposal be consistent with any applicable cooperative or urban service agreement adopted pursuant to ORS Chapter 195 or any concept plan. So as outlined in the staff report, this application meets all of that criteria. The territory was annexed to the UGB way back in 2002 by Ordinance 02987A, and so therefore the subject territory is not in any urban reserve or subject to a reserve concept plan. The territory is, as I mentioned, not being annexed to a city, but rather would be urbanized under Washington County's land use jurisdiction. The property is already zoned for urban use, and that zoning, as I interpret it, would generally allow about 6 dwelling units per acre, but there are some exceptions for greater density and, of course, for middle housing. And then the property owner has expressed that they're looking to provide piped sewer service to the property, which is itself a form of urbanization and could allow for further urban development of the property. The territory is already in the Tualatin Valley Water District and the Tualatin Valley Fire District, as well as TriMet Service District. Indeed, there's a bus stop just right across the property that provides direct bus service to the Tanasbourne-Amber Glen Regional Center. So owners of the territory have consented to this annexation, and notice of the annexation has been mailed to owners of nearby property. No comments have been submitted regarding the application. So therefore, having found that the application meets the relevant approval criteria, staff recommends approval of the ordinance. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right. Thank you, Glenn. Colleagues, any questions? No? Okay. Well, let's have a public hearing on this ordinance, number 26-1541. Georgia, will you please describe to the audience our procedures for the public hearing?
Absolutely. If you are here to testify on ordinance number 26-1541, now is the time to do so. If you are testifying in person, please sign up by filling out a blue card in the back of the room and bringing it up to me. If you're testifying on Zoom or by phone, please sign up using the raise hand function in the reactions or more menus, or by dialing *9. When it is your turn to testify, I'll call on your name or phone number. For those on Zoom, click accept to be promoted to a panelist. Your Zoom window will close briefly before you rejoin as a panelist. You can turn on your camera if you'd like. Testimony is limited to 3 minutes, and the timer begins when you begin speaking. If you are testifying in person, their timer is located on your testimony table, on the wall, and on the digital screen. Please state your name for the record before testifying. You do not need to give your physical address. And Acting Council President Wong, I have received no advance testimony signups, and I'm not seeing anyone in the audience.
Okay, thank you. Well, Seeing no public testimony, we'll close the public hearing. The second reading for council consideration and vote are scheduled for April 30th, 2026. And shout out to Glenn's. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right, seeing no other business, the council meeting is adjourned, and we will now open a work session. Our presentation for the day is a future vision engagement update. Let's see, to share that update, we have Molly Wilkinson, Deputy Director of Planning, Development, and Research, and Jess Sedeb, Principal Regional Planner. Welcome.
Good morning, Acting President Wong and members of the Metro Council. Jess and I are really excited to be here today to give you an update on the future vision. Today, we're going to focus on engagement and let you know what the team has been up to. We're in the middle of a really important engagement period to inform our regional values, so we're happy to have this time with you this morning. Next slide. So we're going to give you today just an update on the Future Vision Commission, what they've been up to, an overview of the engagement, and then talking our overall approach to engagement, and then an update on the regional values engagement period that we're in the middle of. Next slide. So now I'm going to turn it over to Jess.
Good morning, Metro Councilors. Jess Sedeb, Principal Regional Planner. I feel like I've talked to many of you about this project since then, but this project actually hasn't been on a Metro Council agenda since December. So it's been a minute since we've had sort of a bigger picture full group update. So thanks for tuning in today. Next slide, please. So the Future Vision Commission is the body that you all appointed last year. They've been meeting since October. Councilor Gonzalez is the chair of that group, and Councilor Lewis is now on board to support, just to have another touch point with Metro Council. There has been a little bit of flux in the group with a couple of people needing to step away, so I wanted to make that clear that there will be 2 appointments coming through to you all within the next couple weeks. One of those appointments has already been identified. Jody Carson has been attending the last 2 meetings in advance of her appointment. And then we have identified, hopefully, a new youth member of the commission who came through the process of applying for the Future Vision Youth Committee. Very excited about her. Our colleague Laura Combs is going to be meeting with her this weekend and hopefully confirming her participation. So very excited to bring on those 2 new folks to this group. The group has been, discussing background, that they're getting context to build the vision with, whether that is other visions that have been developed by government and non-government partners around the region, making sure that they're exposed to that good work that other folks have already done. And then most recently, last week, got a presentation from our colleague Ted Reed of a bit of a 2040 growth concept report card. What's really happened here in the last 30 years as a result of implementing that important metro policy that was an outgrowth of the Future Vision. And that work will be coming forward through Metro Council as well for your review and edification, and also giving commentary on what you see in that work, and also what questions you have that we could dive into a little more. Next slide, please. This is just the high level understanding of how the commission is going to be bringing together the vision itself. They have developed and will be preliminarily voting on a call to action in their next meeting, which is really the words from the commission to the community about why we need to do this work, why it's important, and why now. The shared regional values are what we are asking the community about right now. What are those things that are most important to us as the people of Greater Portland, and how should they be translated into guiding principles that tell us how to make decisions? The drivers of change is the research portion of this, this scope, which is being conducted by our consultants at Institute for the Future. And that's really looking into what those important forces are that are going to be shaping this region in the next 50 years. A preview of that work sort of in process will be coming to you all in June. when IFTF staff are here to present a foresight awareness training. They'll also be talking to you all about the drivers of change research. Next slide, please. So just a quick overview of our engagement approach and the schedule on which we're doing that. Next slide. I'll remind Council that these are the outcomes that we're really driving toward, that are what you all came up with when scoping this work with us last spring. So not only are we headed toward an updated 50-year vision, but really doing that work with our all of our work kind of centered around this idea of galvanizing partners. And that is kind of a core driving philosophy for the project team in how we're doing all this work. You also told us that you want a vision that is these 5 characteristics. Hopefully it is something that is resonant with and relevant to the folks of the region, and something that is unique to who we are here in Greater Portland. Next slide. These are the engagement principles that the project team brought to you all for a discussion and sign off in December. And these are how we've been conducting the engagement thus far, and we'll be continuing to evaluate how our engagement is going and tweaking along the way. Again, really centering on the relationship building, making sure it's community driven, rethinking how we do some of that work, and then, as I mentioned, also building on the work of others. Next slide, please. One of those ways we're rethinking engagement is integrating arts and culture, and you all had a great presentation, really robust discussion about this about 2 weeks ago, and adopted a resolution where this project is really kind of at the forefront of bringing arts and culture into planning work here at Metro. And it's been a really exciting part of how we're doing this project, and I think is definitely impacting the way that we think about the future and the way that we think about doing our work. So happy to have that, and also happy to continue to be bringing other pieces of arts and culture into this project. And you'll be hearing more about that, I think, in budget presentations from the department upcoming. Next slide, please. Super excited as well about the fact that we have our Future Vision Youth Committee, which has kicked off and had 2 meetings so far. Some of the members of that committee also came to present and speak with the commission at their meeting last week. It's facilitated in partnership with 2 nonprofits, Next Up and the Blueprint Foundation. So we're working with them to both bring together this group, and then also to build upon their strength of working with young people in the region. This group is not only sharing their own opinions, but also guiding our work as to how we engage with and try to get young folks to care about this work, to see its relevance for them, and in particular to guide the formation of a youth summit this summer. Next slide, please. Big picture, we are planning to bring to you all a future vision for consideration next spring, but there's a lot of work to do between now and then to ensure that you all are brought along as Metro Council, and that the region feels involved and engaged in this work. I mentioned our current open period of public engagement happening right now. We'll have another big public round like this when we have a draft vision for the region to review, and then also are looking for guidance about what those critical priorities are that feel really urgent for us to get going on in an implementation phase. And that'll be at the end of the year and beginning of early next year. In the summertime, we are planning to be out in the community, making sure that folks know that we're doing this work, doing some fun family-friendly activities that get people thinking about the future and orienting to what that looks like. And also, it's an opportunity for us to remind folks who Metro is and what we do for the region, all the different ways that we touch people's lives. So we'll be out at community events, and we'll take your suggestions and others of what are the most impactful places to be in your districts when we do that. And then in the early fall is where the pen starts getting put to paper on those aspirations that will form the meat of the vision. And we're doing that at a vision summit and a set of subsequent meetings that we're calling vision tables. And that will be cross-sector leaders from around the region doing that initial drafting that gets fed to the Future Vision Commission. We also are going to have a series of expert panels where we're hearing from folks about critical topics and themes to the work of building this vision, and those are public events and also things that we really want to promote as opportunities for kind of learning together in public. Next slide, please. This is actually what I just talked about. So why don't we go along to the next slide? I want to also call attention to how we're engaging our government partners in particular, because they are going to be critical folks and partners to implementing a lot of what is in this vision. So we are kind of paying special attention to how they're engaged in this process. And those are, our cities and counties and also agency partners in the region. So, looking to you all for the opportunities that you have to get out and present this work as part of your regular engagement with government entities in your districts. We will equip you with everything you need for that, talking points, slides. We're also doing regular updates via Marisa to city and county managers, making sure that they're also aware on the staff side of the house of this work and can help us get the word out about it. We are doing direct conversations with government partners as well, and in particular, we will be setting up conversations with our neighboring cities, because even though they're outside of our official metro boundary as an agency, they're obviously part of this region. There are people who live in Estacada who come to Blazers games. There are people who live in North Plains who come in to go shopping at the Winco in Hillsborough. So people live their lives in this region across these boundaries, and so we want to make sure that we're also hearing from and incorporating the thoughts of our neighboring cities. And lastly, I mentioned that we'll be out in the community at events getting the word out about this project and taking advantage of all of the ways that Metro is already out and talking to folks, whether that is tabling by our Parks and Nature staff that happens throughout the summertime, or openings of bond-funded housing projects this summer. Next slide, please. So lastly, I just want to tell you a little bit about what we've been doing to get the word out about regional values engagement that's going on right now. There are slides with lots of bullets on them coming up, but I just want to say I am going to whip through them to tell you the different kind of categories of outreach that we've been doing to make sure that folks feel like they can engage with this work. Next slide, please. So this is what we're doing, asking folks to engage with the creation of a set of shared regional values that form the foundation. Thank you, have worked with council office staff to get this QR code up during council meetings so that folks who are watching in the room or participating online can take the survey, which is available in the 5 languages shown here. And next slide, please. So we are using every possible Metro channel we think we have to get the word out, whether that is social media, paid advertising, both online and on social media. Thank you, Councilor Gonzalez, for so far having done 2 interviews. Earned Media with KXL and K2 was on last night. Using our print channels from various parts of the agency, whether that's our big backyard or getting physical materials out into libraries around the region. Thank you, council office staff, for doing that as well. We're using all of our email lists, and then we are also promoting this internally to Metro staff. We are the agency that we know will be doing a lot of implementing of this vision, so we want to make sure that folks across all of our departments are engaged in this work. We are part of planning, development, and research, but this will impact everyone here at the agency. So we've put the word out through Metro Together. My colleagues and I are visiting the all staff meetings of other departments, and we have gotten flyers up in other Metro facilities to make sure that staff, say as part of Expo, OCC, P5, and the zoo, also feel like they have a voice in this process. We also have over 1,000 employees at Metro, and so it's a good number of folks to engage in this region. So those are the Metro channels we're using. Next slide, please. We also have this unique group of people who are helping get the word out with the Future Vision Commission. They are convening conversations, they are doing presentations, they are sending the word out through their own networks. Perhaps the most interesting and exciting of these is the opportunity to do some poetry events, poetry slam around future-oriented themes that one of our commission members, Myra Raffia Beverly, is going to be doing. That might not happen during this engagement window, but it's still a great opportunity to use arts as a way of engaging people in this work. Next slide, please. We're also using the channels of our government partners to get the word out, presenting at the community coordinating committees. Councilor Gonzalez and I will be at Portland City Council tonight, this afternoon. We're presenting the work to our government partners and also asking them to use their own channels to get it out there, whether that is TriMet's Rider Insider newsletter, the Boones Ferry Messenger newsletter in Wilsonville, or the Engage pages of Hillsborough and other communities around the region. Next slide. And lastly, we are working with other partners around the region to make sure that they're aware of and feel engaged in this work. And so I'm just highlighting here sort of two categories of that: business organizations and community organization partners. So last week, for instance, we presented to and had a robust conversation with Westside Economic Alliance, and they had invited a couple other Washington County Chamber members to participate in that. We will be at the Intertribal Powwow this weekend, or Friday, I believe, at David Douglas, getting information out about this. We are also thankful to partners who are posting this themselves. So Coalition of Communities of Color put the word out over their Instagram in a collaborative post with us last week. So thankful to the folks who are getting this out there on our behalf. And I do just want to note that we have made the offer to community organizations who can get conversations together with folks who are generally harder to reach, that we will support those events financially if they need to use food, transportation, childcare to make those events happen. Next slide, please.
Okay, so, and I realize I didn't introduce myself at the beginning. I'm sorry. I'm Malou Wilkinson. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Deputy Director of Planning, Development, and Research. We are, again, as Jess said, we are aiming for spring 2027 council consideration of the future vision. We are also aiming to be sure that you are guiding our work along the way. And so we have a plan over the next few months to have monthly time with you at in this setting. In May, as Jess said, we will come back to you with the 2040 Growth Concept Report Card. I think that will be a really interesting conversation to look at how we've performed in a variety of ways since the 2040 Growth Concept was adopted by the Metro Council. We also need to have a little bit of a conversation about project geography. Our current future vision encompassed, I think, 9 counties. That's a little bit broader than, we'll have a staff recommendation for you all, but we would like to have your guidance on the geography. In June, as Jess said, we'll have a foresight awareness training. This is something that Councilor Lewis attended the January Future Vision Commission meeting, along with, of course, Councilor Gonzalez. And so we had a little bit of a taste of that foresight training, but you all as Metro Council are the ones who need to actually adopt the future vision. And so we felt like it was really important to bring the Institute for the Future to give you the same training that our Future Vision Commission had. We're also going to be looking for your thoughts on the drivers of change at that meeting. And in June, we'll be really excited to bring you the results of the regional values engagement that Jess just went into an extensive overview of how we're trying to get the word out. We'll come back to you to talk about what we actually heard in June. And that's, we'll be looking for the next important topics and after June. Next slide. So we have a couple of questions for you. We just want to be sure this is a check-in point for you all, and we're in the middle of an engagement period, so it's a great chance for us to hear if you feel like we're missing something. And then if there are any thoughts that you have in terms of that foresight awareness training that you would like us to convey to the Institute for the Future before that experience that we'll all have together in June. We'd love your thoughts on that. With that, Acting President Wong, we'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Great presentation. Colleagues. What will the rollout in the spring look like? Have you thought that far ahead yet?
That's a great question. We will be having an engagement period before that. And we're in initial conversations about what the rollout, so we'll have the engagement period to be sure that the people of the region have an opportunity to provide feedback on the draft future vision. And so the rollout itself, do you have any thoughts?
Aside from the fact that we want to make sure that this is not a 35-page type document with a woodcut on the cover, we want it to be something that is an engaging piece of work that people can actually see themselves in, whether that is through imagery, through video, through people talking about the commission members maybe and the Future Vision Youth Committee members talking about their engagement with and why they care about this to help people understand it. I think that we want that to be much more of a dynamic thing that people really feel like they can wrap their minds around. I think the thing that is a question in our minds, which we'll be looking for your guidance for when we have a recommendation on this, is what is it you would like to see from partners around the region in terms of their engagement with the future vision? If your guidance to us has been, you really want to see galvanized partners out of this process as well. You want folks who are like ready to work with Metro, ready to work with each other around the region to help get on the path to this 50-year vision. It would be really helpful for us, I think, to understand what you think that kind of commitment looks like. Is it what? Yes. So I would like to have a conversation about that. What you think? I will say sign on, but I don't mean that that's like literally someone signing a piece of paper. We'd like your guidance as to what that kind of interpretation looks like for a rollout.
And in my mind, the most important part of the rollout is that we are rolling something out with some I guess, guiding principles of how this is happening, what we're doing to make this vision a reality. And so I think that's what Jess is really trying to get at here. So we'll have more opportunity to talk about that with you.
Yeah, thanks. And I think you've done a good job of, outreach and engagement, and I think it'd be important when we have something that's more substantive to go back to the, communities that you've reached out to already to make sure that they understand their feedback was incorporated. So to have that feedback loop, and I did kind of notice that I didn't see a lot of in language participation. So I want to make sure that folks that have limited English proficiency, we're doing more to get their feedback, especially in kind of our immigrant communities.
Yeah, so the survey itself is available in 5 languages. The conversation kit at this point is available in 3, and we're happy to do others by request. We've gotten, for instance, a request from Leisha at Division Midway to translate into a couple additional languages for conversations she would like to hold, and we're doing that now. But if there are other spaces that you all are aware of that would be helpful, we actually had a team chat yesterday, about whether there are non-English media outlets that would be helpful to try to get the word out, and would love your guidance and thoughts on that, and opportunities that we could make. Yeah, so that would be great. I know that you phrased that question before.
Yeah. Cool. And I think maybe a future conversation or work session on how do we want the rollout to look like, because I think that's a moment that we want to capitalize on. So how do we make it inclusive and splashy and get the outcomes that we're looking for? Because if it's just a plan that sits on our shelf, I don't think we've gotten the most out of the relationship building and engagement that we did. So sticking the landing is really important.
Yeah, thanks.
Councilor Rosenthal.
Thank you, Chair. I have two questions. One is maybe a suggestion, and then a chicken and egg question. The first one is question, have you thought about, you mentioned the poetry slam, have you thought about a mini TED kind of presentation thing which could roll into a YouTube kind of public media thing which could easily be translated into multiple languages? I'm not sure if we have the capacity to do that. I mean, I think you have the process well in hand, but I'm just wondering, people listen to YouTubes all the time. People listen to things online. And so to convert something that could be provocative online might be something that could be considered. And then the chicken and egg question is, you talked about values and you talked about topics or I guess issues. So the question is, which comes first, the values or the issues? People segment their values. For example, they have different values about governance than they may have about transportation. So how are you thinking about when you develop the different kind of topics in transportation, education, parks and open space, governance, economy, and so on and so forth, and when you ask for values, in other words, general values that apply to everything or specific values that apply to each subject? So I'm just curious, because I'm not sure I quite understand how that works.
Sure. Thanks for the questions. I'm happy to take both of them. I don't know if you have thoughts too. So first on the question about videos. So we do within our project scope have the output of this round of engagement is actually, like, we'll have a report, but we also are scoped to have a video that conveys the outcomes from this round of engagement. So some type of engaging content that helps the region understand what it is they told us they value. And so that's a piece that's already in the scope. The drivers of change research also, we are intending to not just have that be reports. That scope also includes translation of that research into sort of layperson speak in probably in video format as well. So that is not just like an academic exercise, that people actually understand that these are things that are going to impact their lives. Have not contemplated a TED Talk style thing, but we have asked some of the commission members at various points to do short videos, and I think that there's an opportunity to do that again, especially with them as kind of ambassadors of this process, and maybe you all as well, and the youth committee, because I think that probably younger folks are maybe more interested in watching peers sometimes, but that's totally middle-aged me projecting on them.
I'll just make the comment that having sat in a couple of the meetings, it seems that commission members are fairly well engaged, and they're pretty verbal and quite knowledgeable, and they would seem to have broad-ranging opinions that they might be willing to share.
Yeah. It's a unique opportunity that we have in this project to have that commission creating the vision and recommending it to you all and as assets for us. Chicken and egg question. So the way that we have been conceptualizing this is that thinking on a 50-year time horizon really compels you to think at a systems level, and that in that time horizon, and I mean in our world today, all of those things that you mentioned, transportation, economy, environment, they're all connected. The vision really should be considering those at a high level, sort of probably similarly structured to the 1995 vision, where it talked about vision for and implications for an individual, a household, a neighborhood, a society, and our place. Transportation, land use, those get taken up in the growth concept, and they are really more implementation actions of the vision itself. So like, what is it that we can do within the growth concept to embody and implement that vision into our land use policy? So that's the way we're thinking about it. We're not necessarily thinking that within the vision, we're going to have aspirations that are related to transportation or aspirations that are related to the environment. Those will be much more likely to be structured around groupings that relate to the different scales at which people live their lives.
I appreciate that. I would just comment that too broad a vision is going to be hard to translate into the specifics that we will need for planning purposes going forward. Too granular a vision is difficult to abstract the overall principles. So it's a complex process.
Yes, we are aiming for the mama bear vision. Yeah. Right in the middle.
Thank you.
Are there any emergent themes that you're seeing in engagement now? And also, I think we're in tough times right now in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Is that are you seeing that, and how are you going to compensate for current mood versus optimistic future?
I'm just writing notes. I think one thing that we talked about in our planning department, all staff, last week when we walked through some of the engagement tools was how a challenge of this project is the now of now, and that, bless you, it's hard to get people to look up from everything that's going on in the world right now and ask them to consider a 50-year future. And even if they do want to engage with it, it's really challenging to not have people just automatically head into the shadow side of that, and help them see that there is also an optimistic frame of what could happen in 50 years. I think that the language that we're using to describe the project and when we are out there talking to folks about this really is leaning into the fact, into that challenge, acknowledging it head on and saying, this is a really hard thing to do, but we're asking you to come along with us. In terms of themes, we have not really been checking in on survey results to date. We're gonna wait to do that until it's closed. I will say in conversations when we've been floating some of the questions on the survey, the thing that's striking that we've done in a couple settings is used one of the questions from our conversation kit, where we ask folks about what is a favorite place in the region, something that's really meaningful to them, meaningful to their community, that they want to see preserved and passed on. 90%, maybe 85% of those answers are natural areas and parks. It is the thing that is top of mind often for people when they think about what makes this region special and a physical location in this region that they really care about. So that's just been a striking theme that I've seen in having conversations around that specific question.
Councilor Gonzalez.
Thanks, Acting President Wong. Well, hey, Jess and Malou. I just want to reiterate I think the rollout of the Future Vision, the Youth Commission has been it's like this refreshing optimism. And Councilor Wong, you asked about themes. I feel like I've really, whenever I talk with people about this project, I think they're excited to try and be optimistic, to think about what could be better. And so that to me has been really just filling my cup. And I think that the engagement that we have tried to lead has been cross-cutting, and I just feel proud in the work. I know that you're trying to do everything you can with the resources that you have. I never lose a breath knowing that we're not doing everything we can. So I thank you. And I've also been trying to share with folks that this is not Metro's vision, this is the people's vision. So I'm not going to make people raise hands, but has everyone completed the survey? And I'm not just looking at council, I'm looking at leadership, I'm looking at staff, at our guests that are in the room. But I know we're all very busy, but literally if you do the survey, there are a few questions, and even the way those questions are framed will give you a really big sense as to how we're trying to unlock perspective from people. And so I think that I encourage the entire Metro Council to complete the survey, all of our Metro staff to complete the survey, because this is the people's vision, and we are the people, just like our community and our constituents are. So I guess this is a plug for people to complete the values survey, and if you haven't done so already, please do so.
Thank you. Counselor Gonzalez. I will say, I have been trying to get it out in my own networks. I handed out the little QR codes to my daughter's lacrosse team at a team dinner this week. I have my acupuncturist and my hairstylist both have them at their places of work. I'm trying, so I think I'm just saying this as an example because I really do feel like as someone who lives in this region and loves this region and works at Metro, I really want everyone to have their voice heard. And this is only as good as the people who have participated. So thank you, Councilor Gonzalez, for that plug.
Thank you.
And if you need more help with doing that, if you need a stack of postcards, a stack of bookmarks, just come talk to us and we are happy to hand those off to you. I realized too late as I was enjoying the unique Portland experience that is Lads 500 this weekend that I should have had a stack of postcards with me. But I did voice them on a friend of a friend last night who was headed to a neighborhood soup group. So we're all doing our part.
Love that. Thank you.
I've done the survey 20 or 30 times.
Oh.
No, just kidding. Just kidding. That's right.
I love that. We should look into IP restriction. How many survey completions have we had so far? And I know the survey closes May 15th, right? So
I do not have that number off the top of my head. Apologies. Yeah. Yes, we have at least another month. I think once we hit, say, a week out from May 15th, we'll do a little internal team evaluation as to how we're feeling about what we've got, both in terms of numbers, but really also in terms of audiences that we're reaching. Like any good Metro survey or public survey practice, we are asking folks questions about their identity and, want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to get a broad range of people engaging with this.
Thanks. And I don't know if anyone shared on the foresight training that, but I really enjoyed it. And I think, Councilor Rosenthal, your questions about too granular, too abstract, some of these tools that futurists have are very helpful to put us in. So I'm looking forward to the training. And I thought the Future Vision Commission appreciated it. And I think this council will too. I don't think I have any specific notes of what I would change in that, just to answer that question as well.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. We look forward to the next update.
Great.
Thank you. We appreciate your time.
Okay, we'll move on to Chief Operating Officer Communications. Where is it?
Yes, hi. Deep in a different rabbit hole, pardon me. Liam Frost is here today to give us an update on the first Supportive Housing Services Regional Policy Advisory Oversight Committee.
And colleagues, this is a new practice that we're modeling now in CO communications, is instead of having counselors from our advisory committees give us updates, we'll have the staff update so that we're all on the same page.
That's good.
Yeah. Thank you. Liam, welcome.
Acting President, councilors, good to be here this morning. Liam Frost, for the record, Director of Housing at Metro. I use he, him, his pronouns. And more specifically, I'm here to just provide you with a brief overview of the bylaws for the committee that we presented to the Regional Policy and Oversight Committee last night. And thank you to COO Madrigal for inviting us here today to provide this briefing. But before I do that, I wanted to open the floor just in case you wanted to share any thoughts around the meeting itself last night, the RPOC councilors here, and then I can get into the bylaws if you'd like to do that. But if you want to skip that, I can go directly into the bylaws.
Chair, you got anything?
Anything to share about the meeting? It's, let's see, how many, 23 commissioners, 22 commissioners. Most important topic to the voters. Let's just say everyone leaned in, which I think is very important. And how do you define the success of a committee? And I want to make sure that, like my comments are, we did a committee, we succeeded, right? Because that's not what voters or I think we want to see. But what I shared, like in my wrapping thoughts for RPOC was I really see some signs of our like collective regional muscles, this willingness to grapple with the questions that are at hand. I think a general acknowledgement that our work plan is focused and that we don't have unlimited time,
right,
to deliver what I think we all want to deliver, especially if we want this measure to continue. So I can't imagine a better table of people and thought leaders to help us do that. And so I know that I and Councilor Lewis, Acting President Wong, feel a great sense of responsibility to SHS and to that table. So those are at least my feelings. It's like 12 hours since the meeting ended.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit more, but.
And if I can add, I think, some things that stuck out for me were there was some good conversation around the composition of a committee. I think various, perspectives were presented, but I think we did a good job, especially Councilor Lewis, on, justifying that composition and the importance of having everyone at the table. And that this is the table that we've set. That's going to do this work, so we're not going to talk about who's there and who's not. And then I think, I was able to provide some, I guess, clarity and expectations from the council level on what we want from this committee and like what needs to be in place as a prerequisite for any other conversation that we bring to voters. I think that kind of was important to say that from a council level, because I think staff are, unable to talk about ballot measures and things like that. But I think for us on this council, like, we gotta get through this work and we gotta get that product in order for Metro to continue to be engaged in this program.
Yeah, sure. I think it's a good group. We have a lot of cohesion of voice coming from the previous two bodies, and then also new players. I sat next to somebody who's brand new to the conversation at the government level, but she herself is a funder and has long been steeped in the homeless services community of the North Willamette Valley. And as I said to her, look, this is our first day of high school. It just so happens half of us went to middle school together, but we're glad you're here. Welcome to the table. And I think she felt welcomed, and I think that would, kind of overflow to all of the other voices that were new together, new to the table and talking together. We were missing a few folks. The testimony we heard loud and clear when we passed the ordinance setting this table was that cities weren't going to show up. We need to make sure that we develop some muscles so that city voices are at that table. Particularly, I'm speaking to the fact that we have designees and alternates, and we need to make sure that we have a clear way so that if a primary position isn't there, that the alternate knows it's their day to show up, hopefully with more than a few hours' notice. I think it was a good conversation. I think in our work plan, we assumed that we would be unveiling the KPIs and moving fairly quickly. I think the element of a KPI or a tracker around the health of the system was kind of a new concept last night. Probably won't be ready or fully cooked by next month, but we need to keep plowing through with that work. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, and if I could, I think one of the tensions that has been in this measure for the last 5 years is the question of authority versus local rule and implementation, and those things are bubbling. I do think that I want to really give plaudits to my peers, because I think we need to continue to find ways to emphasize Metro's authority. This is Metro's measure, and we're not going to dictate what counties do, but we will dictate what the money is supposed to do. And so there is a special dance that I think we need to do there. But when we talk about regionalizing this program, I think that just sharing this more broadly for our peers and the amount of time that we've dedicated to our work sessions in this topic, I saw us really carry that in our first meeting, and we'll continue to do so, just FYI. just like little comments, little offshoots
Yep.
of things around that. And I'm also seeing the group broadly say, no, actually, we need to regionalize. So there's these validations that are kind of self-reinforcing, and I think I'm hopeful to see that continue. But anyway, Liam, to you.
Well, thank you for those comments, councillors, particularly that last comment there, Councillor Gonzalez, because I think having the three of you represented on the committee immediately set Metro's leadership up. And what I'm about to talk about is just reinforcing that further, which is Metro Council adopting bylaws because this committee is Metro's. So I'm just going to run through a very high-level overview of the bylaws, talk about some of the requests that were made last night at the meeting. The bylaws are currently scheduled for council adoption on consent on Thursday, April 30th, so 2 weeks from today. One other note I wanted to make is that OMA has taken this as an opportunity to draft Metro's first bylaws template too. So it's been a real collaborative process, and I'm glad that OMA could see this as an opportunity to replicate this in other areas too. About the bylaws themselves, they define the purpose and authority of the committee. They clarify that RPOC serves in an advisory role to Metro Council exclusively. They outline the committee composition, establish guidance on alternate members, describe the officers' roles, including the chair and the vice chair, both of which are held by Metro councillors. And they also provide meeting structure and protocol, explain the decision-making process, confirm public meeting requirements, increasingly important, and then they also detail the bylaw amendment process for members as well. So pretty standard boilerplate stuff around committee bylaws. We briefed the committee last night. The responses we got two suggestions from Multnomah County Commissioner Shannon Singleton, and then Lake Oswego Mayor Buck. From Commissioner Singleton, she requested that we provide clarity in the bylaws for when materials would be sent in advance. We've already checked with OMA, Oregon Metro Attorney, on that matter, and we're going to be including that language. On a separate request from Commissioner Singleton, she requested on how a vote would be called. Councillor Gonzalez responded by saying that we would be discussing that next month in a community agreements topic. And then from Mayor Joe Buck, his request was getting more clarity on the committee's role in monitoring and evaluating KPIs and other data. We shared that that is enumerated in the IGAs with each of the counties, and it would be redundant to put that into the bylaws. If I'm missing anything there, councillors who attended last night and participated, please add. But again, we'll be returning with the bylaws for your approval on consent in 2 weeks from today.
Thanks, just anytime we deal with bylaws, I want to be as flexible as possible, and some of the things that you mentioned were just like procedural norms. So if we could just maybe clarify, like I think it's probably okay to have like a bylaws and then another separate document of like procedures and norms that aren't as formal.
Yeah, we're going to have an agenda item next month around community agreements, which should be able to cover those pieces for you. But I'd like to actually talk to you one-on-one and get more detail on that and see if we can deliver what you're asking for.
Okay.
Yeah, I think on that too, I think when we presented them, I think Cole talked about how in general OMA has been looking at a more boilerplate kind of bylaws for our committees. So I want to figure out like how we incorporate some of the, what I'm hearing about like desire for flexibility, but also kind of more consistency for our committees. So I think like I just want to like hold that and see what we think. But
yeah,
I do think there's absolutely room for tweaking, right? But
yeah, and I think some of the feedback were like they focus on the outcomes specifically that aren't supposed to be in bylaws. They're actually something that we're supposed to work on together. So those aren't appropriate for like the bylaws of a committee. So I just want to be thoughtful about the bylaws, which was like kind of big picture, governing principles. I mean, there's like norms, and then there's like the outcomes that we want to see, and there's a range of like what people wanted, and then we're not going to put outcomes in the bylaws sort of thing.
And I think a lot of the membership are eager to enumerate and document some of the key pieces that are important to them. The bylaws are, and we have one of our favorite attorneys at the Housing Department here, Shane Adman and Carrie McFadden, two of our favorite attorneys, to speak to this issue. But they're there to set up the governance of the committee itself. We will document, we will enumerate in other ways around the more programmatic areas, like we did at the TCPB and the Oversight Committee, as Councilor Lewis is familiar with.
Great. Well, I see that opened up some questions. Let's go with Councilor Rosenthal.
Just a quick question. Will the bylaws contain directions or specifications regarding how the committee might ask for either subcommittees or special work groups or independent expertise coming in to testify?
Yes, Councilor Rosenthal, the bylaws do actually specify that, and really a couple of things that I would bring up here is that one of the issues we've had around some of our advisory committees generally is, do you have a charter, do you have bylaws, what are your sort of processes for running meetings? And all of our advisory committees are really chartered by the code. So it's important that council really recognize that's where you set sort of the scope of what you're asking a committee to do. And if council wants to add to that scope, they certainly can do so. Likewise, if a committee wanted to recommend that they be able to take on an area, they could make that recommendation for council to act on. But it's really important, I think, that we end up with a structure so that we don't have competing sheets of paper that people are using as their rules for committees, right? And so we sort of understand that each one must nest inside, inside itself in some manner. As to your specific question for committees, the code actually provides that our advisory committees cannot set up long-term advisory committees or subcommittees. And that's in part, I think, for council to be managing sort of the scope of what these committees do. Also, any subcommittee or other advisory committee would be subject to Oregon Public Meetings laws, which carries with it additional budget impacts and administrative duties. And so I think council wants to keep a line of sight, at least that's how I interpret the code, the reason for it being there, to keep a line of sight on those committees. So we've written some of those elements into these bylaws. They're duplicative in some sense of what's in the code, but we wanted this to be a bit of a document that if a new member were to look at, they had a sort of sense of the four corners within which they were operating. So as a result, other things we included were references to, state ethics laws, public meetings laws, public records, just to build that sort of awareness for our committee. So it's a little bit broader answer to the question that you asked, but those are some of the things that OMA identified in our drafting of these bylaws.
I'll look forward to.
And I guess as a further answer, I might say, like, this council has talked about, would you want to have a technical advisory committee? Would that be appropriate? We do have technical advisory committees for some of our other committees. I'll use JPAC as an example. That's a committee on which this one really was modeled in terms of its overall makeup. Council did create a technical policy advisory committee for JPAC, and that's also in our code. So there is a method by which council could do that.
In this case, I was mostly thinking of a specific question could come up regarding, say, current expertise or current scientific evaluation of certain techniques and so forth. And so the question is how we specify whether, I think it would be dangerous, for example, for the committee to say, hey, we're going to set a group here to do a special work group and report. So that specify how a special study work group short-term might come into play and or be created and how it would be authorized, I think is something that should be in the process.
I do think the bylaws talk about that.
Okay, and I was just, yeah.
Yeah, they do talk about that, like how, what does it need to codify a subcommittee, a temporary work group, or, there's more detail than I expected, but also Shane's here.
Yeah, Councilor Rosenthal, I'd be happy to go over those with you to show you sort of what is in the current bylaws, but I think that there's sufficient architecture around that, but I'm happy to meet with you and
Sure.
walk through them.
And Councilor Rosenthal, your amendment for a review period every 2 years was well received, I think, in the conversation around the composition. So thank you. Councilor Nolan.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the report. As we're moving more assertively, more directly toward a regional approach to housing construction and housing needs, housing services, I interpret that, given the conversations that we all have had over the last several years, that we're moving away from at least some elements of the existing IGAs. So there was reference earlier in this conversation that something Mayor Buck wanted to include was covered in the IGA. And I would caution us not to rely on the IGA language, because I think a certain portion of it, maybe a good portion of it, will be changed over the course of this group's early work.
Acting President, may I respond?
Please.
Thank you. We are actually at work with our county partners to reflect the changes in the pre-existing committees, the TCPB and the SHS Oversight Committee, to now reflect the RPOC within those IGAs. Our attorney, Shane Adam, is working with his counterparts at the counties, and that will be coming before you in the coming months. Additionally, we will need to update the 2020 SHS work plan similarly to reflect the changes that we're making.
Great. Councilor Lewis.
Sure, thank you. I just wanted to reflect when the bylaws were introduced last night, Commissioner West said something along the lines of, well, my council, I think he said they're all out of the country. I think he maybe said they're all out of town. My commission's all out of town. We haven't had a chance to review these, so I don't know. I just want to flag that. Well, first of all, Commissioner Savas was here this morning, so we're not all out of town. But second of all, I am worried that we're going to have some consternation around when materials come out and the ability of folks to process them through their normal review systems. And I don't want us to get to the point where we're on a 2-month review cycle for getting anything done at this committee. So I think with the bylaws, we're gonna need to set some expectations of, you are here as a delegate, and yes, we're not gonna spring things on you like 48 hours in advance. But we also need to have you have the ability to vote with some sort of quick check-in like we have developed here with our counselor communication that happens 2 times a week, so that folks are comfortable moving not only with their own voice, but on behalf of the body they represent. So that's just a flag for me, and the bylaws vote next month will be a test, I think.
Good point.
Any other updates?
I just want to thank the Housing Department staff who worked incredibly hard to set up a near seamless meeting yesterday. There was a lot of work that happened behind the scenes, and my gratitude, I just want to express that to them.
Yeah. Well facilitated. Great work, great snacks.
Great snacks.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to Councilor Communications. Councilor Lewis.
Sure, thank you. Colleagues, I believe in your email you may have seen a request from North Clackamas Watersheds about emailing somebody in the governor's office regarding the Kellogg and the opportunity for some state funding to that amazing project that we've already committed $10 million of construction dollars to from Large Scale Community Vision. So I would like to use this time to see if I could actually get an okay to send it using some model language, just kind of on behalf of council, instead of asking each and every one of us to send an individual email. It does not say anything beyond the fact that project, we've already put money in, state, you should do it too.
Yeah, I feel comfortable with that. We gave them money recently.
Okay.
Well, they
cool.
need more money.
Yeah, thank you.
I would just, President Hong, you're looking at me. I would just note that I think that what Councilor Lewis was suggesting really represents an existing position and commitment of Metro. So this doesn't require a vote or an action of Metro Council. If that was the cause for you to look over in my direction, okay. Perhaps I misunderstood your question. We do not need a vote on this matter. As I understand, what Councilor Lewis has proposed is reflecting Metro's existing commitment to this project and an encouragement to the state to also contribute.
Yeah, and would you like a letter from the acting president on
Maybe we
behalf of
could
council?
jointly sign it on
Sure.
behalf of council or something? Yeah,
Okay.
something like that. Yeah.
All right, sounds good. Okay, well, seeing no further discussion, the work session is adjourned. Our next regular session is scheduled for April 21st, 2026 at 10 a.m. That meeting will be held virtually, so just remember that. All right, thanks all.
Thank you.